7 minutes to Moscow, Washington unleashes a missile nightmare for Putin. Putin begged Trump. The US response dealt a deadly blow to the Kremlin. Ukraine gets the opportunity of the century. Orbán is trembling. Trump breaks the Hungarian bloc and saves Ukraine's path to the EU. A global upheaval. The US is pressuring Putin's allies and pulling Xi over to its side. I'll tell you all the details in just a moment. Hello, this is Ukraine Today. I'm Victoria Panchenko, and here are the latest events. A global sensation, Donald Trump has shocked everyone. With the admission that Putin himself begged him to help end the war in Ukraine. Yes, that's right. The US president stated that the Kremlin dictator allegedly approached him with a request for a peaceful settlement.
I spoke with him 2 weeks ago, and he said that we've been trying to resolve this war for 10 years and haven't been able to do it. You have to resolve this.
Trump insists that he is capable of forcing Putin to capitulate. The politician has repeatedly stated that he can stop the war in a very short time. How exactly? He keeps it to himself. But Kyiv has already made it clear. No secret deals, only Ukrainian terms. The big diplomatic game is gaining momentum. Trump is preparing to meet with Orbán to break Hungary's blockade of Ukraine on its path to the EU. On November 7th, the White House is expecting the Prime Minister of Hungary as a guest, and it will be a heated conversation. The American leader intends to corner Orbán so that he stops playing on the Kremlin side. After the failed Putin meeting in Budapest and against the backdrop of the threat of new US energy sanctions, Orbán's position is on the brink of disaster. Now he is heading to Washington to save his economy and his political skin. If Trump manages to sway Orbán, it will be a diplomatic knockout for the Kremlin and a real game changer in favor of Ukraine. Meanwhile, there's panic in Moscow and Putin's generals are screaming. The US is preparing to deploy missiles in Europe and the Asia-Pacific region. They will be aimed directly at the Kremlin, only 6 to 7 minutes.
And in the future, the deployment of this missile system is planned in Europe and the Asia-Pacific region. The flight time of such a missile from Germany, where this missile system is planned to be stationed, to targets in central Russia will be about 6 to 7 minutes. And
here comes a new statement from Trump. A nuclear reset is coming. The US, China, and Russia may launch a joint plan for nuclear disarmament.
We'll see if it works.
But before everyone could even process that statement, Trump made another round of loud declarations. He stated that the US remains the undisputed nuclear leader of the planet.
I don't even like to admit it, because it's a terrible thing. If it ever has to be used. Russia is in second place. China is not far behind in third. But they could catch up to us within 4 to 5 years. They're striving for it, and they just might succeed. And
after all, not so long ago, America already resumed nuclear testing. A test launch of an intercontinental missile without a warhead, but with pinpoint accuracy, from California straight to the Marshall Islands. The world is once again holding its breath in anticipation. Who's next? Moreover, Trump's strike against Russia's allies could become a lever of pressure on Putin, says political expert Andrei Smoley.
if Donald Trump strikes Venezuela, Nigeria, or any other country friendly to Russia, Putin, or China, it could become an additional argument for putting pressure on the Kremlin.
According to Smoley, such actions by the US could break pro-Russian alliances and show the world that Washington is once again setting the rules. Such steps could become a tool of geopolitical pressure that would force authoritarian regimes to reconsider their behavior. Woe to Venezuela in this fight. Putin and Trump have clashed in a struggle over this South American country. And even though it is still unofficial and indirect, the confrontation between Washington and Moscow is intensifying. More on the events surrounding Venezuela and their impact on the war in Ukraine coming up.
From applause at their meeting and statements about an incredible conversation to what is essentially a direct confrontation on the territory of a third country, Putin and Trump continue to raise the stakes and are closer than ever to an open war between the US and Russia. And this is not about the Ukrainian front, but rather about a war in South America that has not yet begun. Thus, Donald Trump, wanting to finally resolve the issue of drug shipments from Venezuela, sent a 16,000-strong military force to its shores. At the same time, according to the Washington Post, the forces include 8 surface warships, a nuclear submarine, and aircraft, including a B-52 strategic bomber and F-35 fighters. In addition, the aircraft carrier Gerald R. Ford with 5 escort ships.
Currently, about 16,000 American military personnel are concentrated in the Caribbean, including 6,000 Marines. This number also includes personnel stationed at the base in Puerto Rico, where F-35 fighters are currently deployed.
Obviously, realizing that things were getting serious, the president of Venezuela requested military assistance from Russia, China, and Iran. Only Putin responded. He sent a Russian Il-76 military transport aircraft to Caracas.
It is noted that the operator of the Il-76 is the company Aviacon Z2 Trans, which is under sanctions from the US, Canada, and Ukraine due to its ties with Russian military structures, including repeated deliveries of equipment to regions where Wagner PMC mercenaries operate.
Moreover, the flight of the Russian IL lasted more than 2 days. All this was done to bypass the airspace of Western countries and avoid possible cargo inspections. What exactly arrived on board remains unclear for now. However, analysts explain that everything Maduro asked Putin for, he simply was not able to send due to growing losses in the war against Ukraine.
According to internal US government documents leaked to the Washington Post, Maduro asked Putin to help strengthen the air defense system, including the delivery of 14 sets of missiles and the restoration of several Russian Su-30 Mk fighter jets, which Venezuela had previously purchased from Russia. And he also said that some extra money wouldn't hurt, as well as a major overhaul of the engines.
By the way, after Moscow's support, which was obviously announced in advance, Maduro abruptly changed his rhetoric, shifting from endless calls for peace to a clearly belligerent tone.
If they ever dare to come here, here lies the greatest shield of our country, the working class. Not a pin will move, and a general insurgent revolutionary strike of workers and peasants will be declared in the streets until power is returned so that an even more radical revolution can be carried out. Brothers and sisters, take this as an order.
In other words, Venezuela is preparing to fight with Russian weapons against the Americans. Experts add that many of the modern systems in Maduro's army are simply unknown, so if high-precision weapons or drone systems are used, the personnel will clearly be Russian, which could lead to a direct conflict between the United States and Russia. However, it's clear who would come out the winner even before the fight begins. Russia simply doesn't have any extra weapons. Everything is being used in Ukraine. There are no reserves either, nor is there any money. That's why experts say Russian assistance in Venezuela is more of a political gesture from the Kremlin. Once again, it's about bluffing and showing their fake readiness to take on the United States. However, unlike Russia, the US has sent such a contingent and such weaponry to the region that if a war does break out, its outcome will be predetermined. From the very first hours,
Donald Trump's main personal priority is to become the GOAT, greatest of all times, the greatest in world history. In this regard, he is neither a peacemaker nor a warmonger. Where peacekeeping efforts are needed, there will be no diplomatic efforts. Where war is needed to achieve the main goal of becoming the greatest statesman of all time, there will be war, all the more so since this does not contradict the peacekeeping concept of peace through strength. Peace through strength. In order to achieve peace somewhere, sometimes you have to fight at least a little.
But Putin's involvement in this little victorious war of Trump's against Maduro could turn out to be a bunker blunder. Emboldened by success and irritated by Moscow's behavior, the American leader might start making impulsive decisions that are extremely beneficial for Ukraine. If there's one thing Donald Trump doesn't lack, it's emotionality.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Did Trump really succeed? It seems the US president managed to persuade Xi to distance himself from the Kremlin. In South Korea, Trump and Xi signed a historic trade agreement that will strengthen security and restore balance between the countries. This is a new stage in the strategic partnership between the US and China, and yet another blow to Putin's axis.
Is this a truce or the calm before the storm? China has announced the suspension of an additional 24% tariff on American goods. This relief will last for 1 year. At the same time, the basic 10% tariff, which was introduced in response to a similar tariff imposed by Trump in April, remains in place.
The US is the largest market for goods, and China is the largest producer of goods. How does China make money? By supplying its products to the largest markets. And as we've noted, the US is the primary one.
The decision to renew the agreements was made after a meeting between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping, according to Reuters. Thanks to this, tariffs of up to 15% on certain types of agricultural products from the US have also been lifted.
From an economic point of view, China and the US can't really be, let's say, not just in different camps, but actual adversaries. In fact, they are in different camps since they're competing over which of them is the leading economy.
China's Ministry of Finance noted that starting March 4th, they will suspend all tariffs on soybeans and other US agricultural products, including corn, wheat, sorghum, and chicken. It was stated that the decision was made in accordance with the consensus reached during economic and trade consultations between China and the US.
Therefore, despite all the political ambitions and attempts to show that we can compete, that we will be leaders and so on, I emphasize from the perspective of China's economic interests, China needs the US.
The US and China have also agreed to establish a direct line of communication between their armed forces. As stated by Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth, this will help prevent potential conflicts between the countries. Another step China has taken towards the US is its refusal to import Russian oil. According to Bloomberg, major state-owned companies and smaller private enterprises in China have canceled nearly half of their oil shipments from Russia following the US sanctions against Rosneft and Lukoil in October.
When the question arises of whom China will choose, Russia or the US, one must understand a simple thing. There's the US and its largest state is California. And California's economy is twice the size of Russia's economy. A single state in the United States of America has an economy equal to 2 Russian economies. Naturally, for China, the US is far more important than Russia.
Putin absolutely does not want to let go of one of his few remaining partners. That's why he sent his prime minister with greetings to Beijing. As a result of the negotiations, the parties signed about 10 documents on cooperation in the fields of energy, space, and high technology.
Russia is of interest to China as a supplier of raw materials and goods. But Russia doesn't really have much choice except to sell everything to China. China understands that Russia depends on it and that Russia won't take any steps against it. And with America, it's interesting because it's a sales market.
According to Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service, Russia is sinking ever deeper into economic dependence on China. Raw material projects in the Far East and Siberia are turning the region into a resource base for China. Meanwhile, local communities are left out of the promised benefits.
And what do you think about Trump's statements? We're waiting for your comments. Stay tuned for more and don't forget to like. Wishing you peaceful skies above.